So we've got another couple questions from viewers, and I'm going to get to those before we're done. But I wanted to go, Representative Plowski, so that we don't run out of time to talk about the topic you raised, which is a more philosophical question, which is the process of improving the legislative machinery, so to speak. And so I want to give you a minute or two to talk about that, and then we'll see what your colleagues think of your ideas.
So today we have hit 4,210 bills introduced into the Minnesota House. 4,210 for a 120-day session over 2 years with 134 legislators. I'm going to repeat that. For 120 days over 2 years, 134 legislators were at 4,210 bills. You cannot put an infinite number of resources into a finite system and expect anything other than a breakdown. Over the last 20 years, we've had 16 special sessions, including last year's, where both the governor and the legislature managed to soil itself by attacking each other, the resolution of which we had to have the first week of this session. So when I chaired government operations, I had 8 hearings. I opened it up to the entire House, and we made a series of recommendations. Those recommendations you can see online. They're still on my website. At least one of them was adopted, and I think it's still used, and it's used well, because nobody can say we shouldn't use it, and that is when a bill comes to the House floor, you have to post your amendment 24 hours in advance so everybody in the state can take a look at it and see what the amendment does. There were other recommendations. Now, I know this is not going to sit well with some people, but there are states that say you get only 6 bills for the course of a session. Well, 6 times 134 is still a lot of bills. By the way, I have 5. The ones I really like are the drop-dead deadlines. So at some point, no more introduction of bills. We just work with what we have. Let's say it's 3,000. I think that's a lot. I think we can, manage to do what we need to do with 3,000 over 120 days or whatever it might be. We have
keep in mind a very small percentage ever winds up passing.
Well, you and I both know how many of these things pass. Yeah. And it's 5% or less, maybe. That we have drop-dead deadlines both for policy and finance committees, and that we establish targets early. So, for instance, for capital investment, I think he should have a target right now, and we should be working on what's in that target right now so we understand what's in it, and not like what happened in 2016 when we went to the House floor with a bill that had been concocted in the last 2 hours, and then...
And I was not chairman.
No, you were not. No, you were not. But when the amendment, which was 4 lines long, to make that bill work, 4 lines, and now we have 20 minutes left in session, and there were only 2 errors. There was a decimal place missing in one line and a 0 in the other. So it was only $821.9 million off. We passed it. It went to the Senate, and it died because of lack of time. That should have had at least a week for everybody to take a look at what the bill was, how it worked, and that should never. Plus, it had 30 major errors and 29 minor errors. And I'll give you an example of a major error. Duluth had a project for $26 million. It was on the spreadsheet. It wasn't in the bill. We don't pass spreadsheets. We pass bills. Duluth was very upset, and rightfully so. So, time. Take your time. Make sure the public has input. Make sure everybody understands what you're voting on before you vote on it. And again, if I think we could possibly hit 5,000 bills this session.
So just to be devil's advocate here, Representative Plowski, I've been doing this program now 27, 28 years. I'd have to do the math. That's another one of those things I wasn't great at in school. But I think in most years, certainly in most full years, the problem that you're identifying, regardless of which party's in control, regardless of which governor is in the governor's mansion, we seem to have this problem. And so the question is, can you make structural reforms to deal with this, or is it just simply a function of the legislative process and there's just no way to fix it?
I think when I chaired GovOps, that's the first extensive series of hearings we ever had on legislative process. And it was bipartisan. The recommendations were bipartisan. The fact is, and I'm going to repeat it, 16 special sessions in 20 years. There is nothing special about a special session. Go to the last special session. It's because of that special session that something had to go to your court to be decided whether or not the governor could veto legislative budgets. This all came out of that special session. We don't need a special session. We need to complete our work during session. We need to make sure everybody understands what we're going to do. And frankly, we don't need to be cute about putting things in, whether it's the Department of Revenue or whether it's the governor line item vetoing budgets. That should never be an issue that's before us. What's before us, what's good for the people of Minnesota, making sure this budget works and those resources go where they need to go.
So let's, our senior, other senior member on the House side, what do you think about all of this process reform?
Well, I think Representative Plowski has a lot of good ideas that, and you know, I wish that we could just snap our fingers and they would all work. You know, I taught how the process worked for a long time, and then I get into the legislature and find that it doesn't always work the way I taught it, and especially when you get into capital investment. And there are all kinds of reasons why it doesn't quite work the way it's supposed to. Where, you know, the House passes, the Senate passes, you go to conference committee, and then the governor signs, and you have a law, and it just, for a lot of different reasons, doesn't always work that way, especially in capital investment. Part of the problem, frankly, is trust. I think in a lot of ways we are suffering from a deficit in the trust level. And there are other factors involved as well. And then there's, you know, you try to put the bill together and you think you've got it, you think you're putting the bow on it at the end, and then you get in that room and someone goes, oh, just one more thing. And it's not the best way to put things together.
Senator Dibble?
But I will say this. We came out with a very good bill last time. For as bad as things were putting it together, at times the bill was very good.
Senator Dibble?
You know, so I've been around a while now myself, and you know, there's always been politics and always you know, leaders kind of cutting deals in the you know, the back hall or the back room, and you know, that's been true since time immemorial. But I've never seen as bad a process as I've seen in the last couple of years. Representative Plowski is absolutely right. These, and it's happening in Congress too, these, you know, many hundreds of pages long bills just appear on our desks in the final hours of session. No one has seen or read, and we're asked to vote on these. It is unconscionable. It is shocking and totally unacceptable. So I strongly support Representative Plowski's arguments for early deadlines, budget targets established early so we know what we're working towards, making sure that the bills are out and in a readable format so that the public can be informed, so those who know something about something can inform us about what it is that's in those proposals, so that we can consider them in the full light of day with good information. I mean, I just can't even believe what we've been forced to vote on in the last couple of years.
And I just want to say, to push back a little bit on that in terms of the unprecedented nature, again, reflecting on my time here, and actually I think this might even precede my time here, Representative Plowski, you talked earlier about vocational schools. The combination of the vocational schools and the community colleges, that little experiment, whether it's been successful or not, as I recall, was an end-of-session event sponsored by the then Senate Majority Leader, Roger Moe.
Well, actually, what he did was combine all of the 2 years with the 4 years into one system called MnSCU, which I voted against repetitively until the governor said, well, you're going to do it or you're not going to get a bill. And it has taken 3 small systems that were highly focused into one behemoth that is now in downtown St. Paul. It's the 3rd largest campus in the Min-State system, and it doesn't have a student. So you'll notice I'm on another bill with Representative Knobloch to say, let's take all the administration, divide it up, put it on the campuses, and then the campuses can support the administration and the administration can support the campuses. But I want to repeat the last one. The administration is there to support the campuses.
And my point would be that was a last-minute legislative session.
It was by a certain senator who is now, I believe, a trustee of the Minn-State system.
And, just to be clear, a lot of the points you're making, I don't disagree with. That those should be things that we aim toward doing. But another thought that, a bill actually, that Representative Knobloch has is to go back to a nonpartisan legislature. That would be an interesting take on the future, too.
Well,
Senator Osmak, I want to invite you to the party. I didn't want to get
bring in the rookie. So I've lived through unilateral DFL control. I've lived through split government where the House and Senate were in two different parties. Now I've lived with Republicans in both chambers having the majorities. And I don't necessarily say that it's just the last couple of years. When I was in the minority, we would get bills the last hour of session, and you're expected to read through that much paper. Well, of course that's not going to happen. You do rely upon the leads of your committees to know what's in, what's out, that you know what's in the bill itself. But it isn't necessarily, this is not something that's just happened in the last couple of years. And to Representative Erdahl's point, there is something that I call the Columbo syndrome, that you get done with a bill and then they go, but one more question, like old Detective Columbo, there's always one last thing that they want to put into it. So we've got to avoid that. I absolutely agree with you. The one thing, the only way you can reduce the amount of legislation that's going on would be to reduce the number of legislators that are doing it, because my House colleagues have a House colleague that put in a bill to ban somebody from the state of Minnesota because he didn't go out with a girl. It was the darndest thing I've ever seen, and it shouldn't have been submitted as a bill, but he did. So you can't stop people. It's a legislative First Amendment that you can put any stupid bill you want up. But I think people have to be a bit more judicious about the silliness that they get into.
But I agree. But if you had a limited number of bills, I doubt whether that would be one of them.
I would hope
If you
not.
said you had 6 bills and that's it, and by the way, I think this has a corollary effect. It would mean certain lobbyists would have to pick and choose legislators very carefully if they wanted to get a bill in. You can go to almost anybody, and they'll throw it in. We have members who put in over 100 bills. I can't remember 100 bills, but I can remember my 5 very easily.
So let me ask, let's just take that one piece. Let me just ask, just go around the table. Is there some prospect that particular reform, limiting the number of bills that a legislator can introduce, is there some prospect that might, they'd have to go through the House rules, House and Senate rules?
These would be rules now, and this is
Right.
the other interesting thing, because when we started doing these reforms, I had members come up and say, well, I want to be on the bill, and you go, no, these are the rules. We have to police ourselves, and I'm a golfer. I'm used to policing myself. I don't have any problem calling a penalty on me. But we have to police ourselves legislatively, too. And it would have to be in both House and Senate rules, and there'd have to be adjustments to joint rules.
But do you get a mulligan?
No.
No mulligans. You get 6 and that's
No,
it. What do you
play
think,
the
Senator?
ball as it lies.
I think it would have to be part of the rules of the body itself. I don't think you can possibly legislate it or constitutionally make it work, because you're going to go. You would run afoul of a group called the Supreme Court probably at some point in time. I like the idea, but I think we'd have to self-impose it, and I think there's merit to saying you can only have 6 or 10 bills. In the Senate, we'd probably want a few more, if you know what I mean.
And the other issue is those bills would have a higher likelihood of being heard.
This is true.
And that's the other side of it. I think there'd be more productivity with the bills we'd be putting in.
Senator Dibble, what do you think?
I think it's a terrible idea. I don't think there's anything magic about limiting the number of bills. And I frankly think it thwarts, we're kind of the representatives of the people, and it thwarts, regular people's access to the process, and I wouldn't want to hamper that. But I do agree strongly that we have to be self-policing. I've seen a lot of just doing things because we can, and not limiting ourselves. Big issue that I talk about a lot is earmarking roadway projects, for example. We haven't done that, maybe a little bit here and there around the edges, but we had this long list of 24, 28, 50, I don't know, roadway projects, and that's how the highway user funds were all going to be. And we had no idea. That's just a political list, and it had no bearing on reality yet. Suddenly the dam broke, and years of transportation chairs not doing that, not allowing that, it crumbled this last year. So there's a lot of that, and I completely disagree. Maybe the Minsky system, that was one bad idea that came in the last minute. But and some of these bills might have been rushed through, these large omnibus bills, but mixing policy with finance, not knowing what the targets are, not having open conference committees to at least show what's in the bill before it comes to the floor. That's just not happening. These bills are coming out of a back room, fully formed, budget, policy, all mixed together, actually violating the single subject rule in the state constitution, and just a mess, and literally unread, full of errors, showing up on our desks in the final minutes of session. I think these are things that we absolutely have to forbid in our process.
Last word to you.
I think self-discipline, of course, is very important. I have, I think, about 40 bills that I've chief authored, but I'm chair of a major committee, and I must have turned down 40 to 50 more that they came to me asking me to do. But in a larger sense, I just think having discipline, and a lot of the bills, though, yes, there are some that hit us at the end, but there are a lot of ones that we see as we go through the process as well. We just had an omnibus bill education innovation session just came from there, and we went through a bill and did it the way we're supposed to do it, and judiciously, and I think we have a pretty good bill with civics education in there.
Oh, well, there you go.